Big Lonely Doug is the perfect physical representation of what these forests can do, what they can grow. It's 20 stories tall, it's almost 12 meters in circumference. It's hard to grapple with that kind of size when you're talking about trees unless you're standing underneath it and looking up. And I think for a lot of people who visit it, that's exactly what it represents. It represents what used to grow across this province, what used to grow up and down this coast, and what remains. I first came across Big Lonely Doug like a lot of people do, which is through a photograph. And when I saw the picture of that, it was hard not to be emotionally moved, hard not to be struck by that power of that image, something preserving, something surviving and withstanding all of the elements and everything industry had thrown at it, completely on its own. The first question for me was, well, somebody must have saved this tree. That tree is worth a lot of money, and otherwise it would have been cut down. And so I kind of set about to try to find that person, try to find that character who inevitably did something to save that tree. And my first thought was, well, most likely that was somebody who worked in the timber industry. Most likely that was somebody who worked in logging. And I eventually found him. And he was a man named Dennis Cronin, who was one of these classic lifer loggers. And came towards the end of his career, and as he was walking through this one forest just outside of Port Renfrew, decided that this was one tree that he did not want to let be cut down. And all these forest engineers, their job is to walk through a forest before the fallers arrive and to prepare the forest to be cut down. They'll mark roads where roads should be built. They'll mark the boundary in all this brightly colored flagging. And there's one color of flagging that these timber engineers rarely use, and it's green. And he took out this ribbon and he wrapped it around this one tree's giant trunk, and along its length were leave tree, leave tree, leave tree, and that was enough to save it. And I think after a while, it's hard to see them come down. You start to appreciate what those forests offer beyond their value in timber. And this was one tree in one day where he essentially said no. There were a lot of big trees in that cut block, a lot of big firs, a lot of big cedars, and all those other ones were cut down, but this was one tree. He told me because I liked it. And it was as simple as that. He saw the tree, he liked it, he wrapped the flagging around it, he protected it, and it was saved. And since then, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of other hectares of that original forest has continued to be cut down. And it's a stark reminder that this is one tree, and it's not a perfect image, because a perfect image would have been that tree standing in an intact forest. But the power of that image, the contrast, the juxtaposition between something living and surviving and the entire blasted remains of a forest that once was, is an incredibly powerful image.